Indiana Jones. You know Indiana Jones, everybody's favorite relic hunting, student teaching, Nazi punching, baddie shooting, thuggy lynching, gangster skewering, mechanic slicing, accident causing, woman whipping, kid striking. Dude, it was fine at first, but slow your roll. See a therapist. Adventurer. I know that you know who Dr. Henry Jones is. And I know that you know that the Raiders films in which he stars are love letters to the action-adventure B-movies and Saturday matinee serials both Lucas and Spielberg devoured in their respective boomer kid youths. And I know that you know also-rans tried capitalizing on the franchise's major successes. But how well do you know all of this brood? The rip-offs, knockoffs, and break-offs of the good doctor's rip-snorting, whip-snapping, globe-trotting exploits? Well, here is a comprehensive list of all of them. These are the Jones clones of the 1980s. Before we get into it though, I'm going to do a quick little preliminary thing. We are not talking about Sphinx. Though it released the same year as Raiders and shares a lot of Jones clones elements, it was actually released 4 months shy of it, so it can't be a Jones clone. So from here on, we will be covering features released after Raiders. We're not extending past 1989. Yes, Jones clones continued well into the present day on the big and small screens. You have your various national treasures, your Tomb Raiders, and whatever the hell those librarian movies are. But did you already forget the video's title? Number 1. Hunters of the Golden Cobra. It's just like the Italians to be the first out of the gate on a copycat trend. Opening during the Second World War, 2 Secret Servicemen turned soldiers of fortune are hired by the Allied forces to locate and recover the titular Golden Cobra, worshipped by a cult and rumored to have some nebulous supernatural power. Not just the start of the Jones clones, but the first of an unofficial trilogy directed by Antonio Margheriti. Nope, we're not doing that. With booby traps, restless natives, a marketplace rumble, a truck convoy mashup, more violence than a PG rating today would allow, and a forbidden temple hidden in a volcano that threatens to come crashing down on our heroes, Hunters of the Golden Cobra ticks all the boxes you'd want out of an Indiana Jones on layaway production, and it is a more than appropriate start to this list. Number 2. Robbers of the Sacred Mountain. Coincidentally, the only other Tomb Defiler of 1982 happens to have an active volcano climax as well, and, being a Showtime original, has ample amounts of unnecessary but necessary nudity. Number 3. Treasure of the Four Crowns. Hot on the heels of their success with the 3D spaghetti western Coming At Ya, actor/producer Tony Anthony and director Ferdinando Baldi decided to get in on the Italo Jones clones fad for their next 3D epic. The first dialogueless 20 minutes aped the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, as parka-wearing JT Stryker ventures into the bowels of a haunted castle, where all sorts of booby traps lay in wait for him. This scene is a perfect example of how Italian genre filmmaking would work. They would take a popular foreign film, or any film really that was a major success, and not just copy it, but crank it up to 11, even with the obvious budget constraints. Example, whereas Raiders has 1 large boulder chasing our hero, Treasure has 2, and both are on fire. Number 4. Raiders of Yungkang Caves. The Chinese enter the fray with a period film about martial artists of varying disciplines duking it out for the ultimate prize, lost Buddhist scriptures. Neat that they shot their high-flying action at an actual Buddhist temple located at the caverns of the title. It's a real place. Number 5. Ark of the Sun God. Antonio Margheriti reassembles the cast and crew from Hunters of the Golden Cobra for another relic hunting romp. This spiritual successor favors miniature car chases over overt brutality and takes a while to get to the temple hopping business, but it leads the franchise in which it's aping in 2 forms. 1, it's got a rat attack half a decade before The Last Crusade, and 2, a more rousing climax than Raiders. If that strikes you wrong, it really shouldn't. Indy strapped to a pole and closing his eyes isn't exactly the most exciting apotheosis in the world now, is it? Come on, you can admit it. Number 6. Romancing the Stone. A movie in which a Harlequin romance novelist and a shotgun-toting exotic bird smuggler get roped into a charming and comedic treasure hunt for a giant emerald deep in the Colombian jungles. The script for this one languished in the offices of top studio brass since the late 70s. Coincidentally, around the same time similar action/adventure offerings were playing the big and small screens, an indication that there was a yearning for this stuff then, at least by Hollywood screenwriters. Audiences didn't really come around until Lucas and Spielberg's joint stab at the material though. After that success, 20th Century Fox was more than obliged to finally greenlight this Romancing the Stone jumble of pages thing that had been collecting dust in a drawer somewhere. The movie was finally produced in late '83 and became a surprise housewife hit in 1984. A rushed sequel followed in '85, and we'll get to that when we get to that. Number 7. The Perils of Gwendolyn in the Land of the Yik Yak Paddywhack Give a Dog a Bird Such was the Indiana Jones cash-in craze that even a French 1940s bondage comic strip was taken and retooled into a temple hopper. Listen, the frogs are weird, okay? I mean, what is this exactly? I like looking at women too, but this is extreme. Okay, this I sort of get. Nope, see? Back to being unacceptable. No good. And that's a little much, but okay. That's very nice. Well done. But what the f*** is this? Who the f*** is this for? Who gets off on this crap? That looks fucking uncomfortable. And what is that? Is that a spur? You know what? Never mind. Virginal Gwendolyn hires a hunky mercenary as a guide to journey deep into uncharted territories of China in search of a rare butterfly. The duo inadvertently discover a lost realm inhabited by an all-female society ruled by a malevolent BDSM queen who thirsts on S&M torture and other debaucheries. You might say that this Jones clone certainly puts the boob in booby trap. Number 8. Yellow Hair and the Fortress of Gold. Yep, another female-led tomb defiler, and boy does the trailer really want you to know it.
She's the female Indiana Jones, says the film journal.
This Spanish-American co-production is actually a Western with Jones clones elements. Whereas the Lucas-Spielberg trilogy is a sort of greatest hits reel of Republic serials of yesteryear, Yellow Hair and the Fortress of Gold takes the homage patchwork aspects a step further by including a faux child audience who cheer and jeer where appropriate, which seems a tad out of place considering the R rating and abundance of death. Number 9. Hero. This Tollywood production has Indian Jones here uncovering a Hindi fountain of youth that spews out some, let's say, peculiar liquid, but not before ripping set pieces from Raiders wholesale, including minutia like this.
Indy! Oh, Jesus!
Now this practice isn't unheard of course. Have you been keeping up the past few minutes? But here it reaches a whole new level of libel by utilizing actual footage from the source itself. Number 10. Goonies. Not content on waiting to make The Last Crusade, Spielberg produced his own Indiana Jones ripoff, with a ragtag gang of kids in a race against some bumbling criminals for a 17th century pirate's treasure, hidden deep in the bowels of a cave replete with hidden dangers, including pitfalls and, depending on what version you watch, a man-eating octopus. Number 11. Jungle Raiders. Two foreign opportunists make a living in South America by scamming wealthy tourists into thinking they've lived through harrowing jungle treks on the search for priceless artifacts. The treasures are really trinkets, and the danger's phony.
Halang, put all the war paint stuff away. This one's official.
A unique premise, dropped prematurely, in favor of more standard fare involving the search for the genuine article. Margariti's third and final trek into Jones clones territory, this time dropping the reliable cast from the previous two vehicles, but adding the steely-eyed presence of Lee Van Cleef, so it balances out. However, don't get too excited, because Van Cleef is regulated to an advising oldster role, so he doesn't get to do much, aside from briefly trading on his spaghetti western fame by gunning down some river pirates with a 6-shooter. Number 12. Treasure of the Amazon. This Mexican production of course rips off Indiana Jones. Why else would it be on this list? However, it does take a break from all that to feel the breeze, smell the roses, and rip off the man-eating spider sequence from Lucio Fulci's The Beyond instead. 13. King Solomon's Mines. Largely remembered today for a salacious behind-the-scenes story concerning a poorly behaved pre-stardom Sharon Stone bathing in a tub full of pee-pee, courtesy of an aggrieved cast and crew, King Solomon's Mines was an attempt by Cannon to ride the coattails of Henry Jones by way of adapting a then century-old yarn. Now, a lot of these temple-hopping also-rans are half-hearted send-ups of Raiders, often carrying the label comedy, action, adventure. Personally, I think this was a sign of low confidence on the part of the copycat filmmakers. The strategy being poking fun at those Lucas and Spielberg joints, and at the same time, its own product, in the hopes that the audience would forgive its shortcomings by comparison. Which, I admit, is probably a good instinct to have when going up against the studio behemoth, and King Solomon's Mines is no different. However, unlike a lot of its ilk, it sells itself short by using humor as a crutch. That's not to say that the tongue-in-cheek antics of this potboiler aren't welcome. I'm just saying that despite its reputation, it's a genuinely good, pacey adventure picture from an action standpoint, despite the fact that lead Richard Chamberlain can't throw a punch to save his life. And kicking. Kicking is also a problem. Number 14. Firewalker. And welcome to 1986, the subgenre's most prolific year. Chuck Norris began his leading man career fighting flesh and blood opponents, and by the end of that mainstream run, he was going up against Satan himself. So why not fit a temple hopper between all that? Number 15. Armor of God. Jackie Chan goes Indy Jones. In this flick, where an ex-music sensation turned mercenary, don't ask me, I just watch him, is recruited by a wealthy baron to steal 2 holy artifacts from a deadly cult. The film was never given a theatrical release in the States, but its 1991 sequel, Armor of God 2 Operation Condor, did find its way into the US cinemas under its subtitle, Operation Condor. The original was subsequently released direct-to-video, but was dubbed as a sequel to the 1991 vehicle as Operation Condor 2, The Armor of the Gods. Confused yet? Don't blame you. Number 16. The Magic Crystal. 1986 was the year Hong Kong action went temple hopper, as we have another example here, although you'd be fooled at first, as most of the early flying kick set pieces take place in mundane locales like hotel rooms, apartment complexes, warehouses, suburban homes, and recreational parks. We do finally get a more traditional Jones clone setting for the climax, inside of a subterranean lair beneath Grecian ruins where there's, well, another kung fu fight. The MacGuffin is actually a space alien hiding inside of the titular mineral, and the last fight takes place at the base of a buried UFO with a mummified extraterrestrial in the pilot seat that returns to life at the end and evaporates the Ruski Chief Heavy. Which all sounds, eerily familiar, but fair is fair. The Magic Crystals filmmakers ripped the scene from Stevens' The Goonies first for their own spelunking opus. Number 17. The Mines of Kilimanjaro, or Africanter as the title screen parenthetically insists, is about an American academic in a race for a hidden mine while battling headhunters, Chinese gangsters, a scantily clad RPG-wielding tracker employed by said gangsters, and, stop me if you've heard this one, Nazis.
The Third Reich needs these diamonds for its expansion.
How many fucking times are we gonna go back to this shit? Number 18. Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold. Shot back-to-back with King Solomon's Mines, City of Gold just doesn't live up to its predecessor. J. Lee Thompson, director of the previous one, bailed on helming the sequel in favor of directing another movie from canon. And his presence might have made the difference here, as only the first third of this attempts the excitement of Solomon's Mines. Once the titular City of Gold is reached, the whole thing just comes to a dead standstill, with little to no action. Henry Silva's there for added marquee value, Elvira's there for, well, 2 reasons, and everybody just lingers around the cheap-looking Zimbabwean set until a rushed high-wall siege climax caps the movie off. What I don't get is, the trailer showcases a nifty-looking set piece involving suspended gondolas, and even Quatermain with a whip, but it's not in the final cut. What happened here? This disappointment could have really used those inclusions. On a lighter note though, the punching has improved. Number 19. King Solomon's Mines. The decade saw another, more accurate adaptation of H. Rider Haggard's 1885 adventure novel. This Australian cartoon runs just under an hour, so it's not exactly a feature, but here it is, and there it goes. Number 20. The Seventh Curse. 1986 was the year of the tiger, but if you ask Western old me, it was the year of the Chopsocky Jones clone. The Seventh Curse, the third and wildest of the Hong Kong productions, sees Chow Yun-fat play Wisely, an adventuring 60s Chinese pulp hero who is out to rescue a young lady from a black magic cult. There is a relic, holy ashes inside of a giant Buddha statue, but it's secondary to the plot, not unlike the Sankara stones of Temple of Doom. Number 21. Sky Pirates. Hey look, check this out. The Ark has been raided, the stone romanced. Now, let the real adventure begin. That's really bold, Sky Pirates. Really fucking bold. The first half hour of this Aussie Indiana Jones on layaway production resembles more a creepy Twilight Zone episode about a time warp than it does a swashbuckling adventure film. But afterwards we get the usual two-fisted fare concerning a cynical World War II aviator trying to keep an ancient thingamawatsit out of the hands of the Wehrmacht. The pop pilfering extends past the Raiders movies too, so keep your eyes and ears open for some unlikely snatch and grabs.
You feel lucky.
Number 22. Kiss of the Cobra. A viewing experience that feels much like the real-life counterpart of the following. It's a painful watch. Number 23. The Legend of Wisely. As you'd guess from the title, the Chinese were not done with Wisely just yet, now on the search for an ancient magical pearl. For the record, author Ni Kuang considered this production the best adaptation of his book series, but he wasn't proud enough to appear in it as he did in the previous year's The Seventh Curse. What a scumbag. Number 24. House 2, The Second Story. Who would have thought that a 1987 sequel to a 1985 comedy haunted house flick would have dealt with the hunt for Aztecian crystal skulls? Well, here we are. Number 25. Jane and the Lost City, where danger, excitement, and serviceable writing don't just take a backseat, they don't even occupy a spot at all in this supposedly comedic vehicle adapted from a hornball 40s newspaper strip consisting of its title character in various states of peekaboo, looky-loo, and undress. The only amusing thing about Jane is how it was marketed internationally. It was released in Italy as a sequel to Casablanca, and a few decades later as a Quartermain installment for the German home video market. Probably because outside the UK, the property is a total mystery, and the movie adaptation isn't doing it any favors, as it has to be the absolute nadir of all the Jones clones. 26. Treasure of the Moon Goddess. I stand corrected. This is the worst one. 27. Crystal Triangle, The Forbidden Revelation. This one is for the weebs. An OAV, not gonna lie, I had to look that abbreviation up, about a
Part-time
teacher and a
part-time
archaeologist in a race to find and decipher God's message, a divine memorandum said to be more important than the 10 Commandments themselves. A wacky premise, made all the wackier when God appears as a first-gen Pokemon. 28. The Secret of the Inca's Empire.
I'm not Indiana Jones, for God's sake!
Well, it finally happened. It only took 6 years and more than 24 movies, but they finally made one that directly references the franchise it's ripping off. 29. The Secret of King Mahi's Island. We got back-to-back secrets here, but whereas Inca's Empire was actually fun, King Mahi's secret probably should have remained one. 30. Future Hunters. History tells us the Access powers sought the spear that struck the side of your lord and mine because it was said its possessor would gain unlimited power. 1988's Future Hunters reveals what that power was. Time travel. Because sure, why not?
Did you guys ever go to Sunday school?
31. Curse of Snakes Valley. Say what you want about this Russian-Polish co-production, but on a relic hunt, I don't think Dr. Jones would have gotten past this guy.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
32. Ninja Operation 7, or Hands of Death, or Secret of the Lost Empire, or Royal Warriors, or whatever it's calling itself this week, is actually 2 movies stitched together by the deft hands of one Godfrey Ho. Or should I say, daft hands. Yeah, alright. The first is a treasure hunting Jones clone, and the other focuses on ninja mayhem in the jungle. 33. The Magic Emerald. Another Godfrey Ho joint about running around in the jungle looking for the MacGuffin of the title. 34. Battle for the Treasure. The heavily armed characters in this want some priceless Cambodian jade representing a once powerful dynasty, but the audience is here for the jetpack. 35. Bloodstone. An American/Indian co-production. Considering the final product, neither country should have bothered. 36. Raiders of the Lost Ivory. This snoozy piece of popcorn pap takes place in Vietnam, but was shot in the Caribbean island of the Dominican Republic. How do I know that? Well, they don't typically make those in the NAM. 37. Deathstone. German production about a cursed rock being passed around like a hot potato by a cast that includes a woman who looked like this in her 30s and a guy who looked like this in his 70s. 38. Journey to the Center of the Earth. Yes, it is adapted from a Jules Verne novel, but being that this is the 38th entry on the list, by now you probably have a good idea as to why it was produced. 39. Vibes. Not content with simply producing a song and music video for the Goonies, Cyndi Lauper had to go and star in her own Temple Hopper, a Lauper Hopper, if you will, alongside Jeff Goldblum. And for the record, well, not that one, but yes, that one too. The pop star also laid down a track for the film.
It's gnarly. It'll crack you up.
40. Explorer Woman Ray. Another anime, this time with a female indie surrogate investigating a lost temple. 41. The Serpent of Death. The one where the Indiana clone wears a cap instead of a fedora. 42. Jewel of the Gods. The one where the Indiana clone uses a boomerang instead of a whip. 43. River of Death. Canon managed to pinch one more Temple Hopper out before the end of the 1980s, but more importantly, it is genre superstars Donald Pleasant's second Jones clone of the decade, both times as a member of the National Socialist Party. Do you ever wonder if it just became routine for him? Like, imagine him walking into wardrobe on day 1 of the shoot and being like,
"I'm Donald Pleasance, could you please point me to my Nazi uniform?"
44. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the adaptation. Some early 80s kids were so obsessed by Raiders, they decided to remake it. Shot for shot, with less than a percentile of the original's budget. 45. The Return of Indiana Jones. A porn parody, but of course, every film movement big enough gets one, I guess. Now, as we linger on these images for an uncomfortably long while, indulge me. Right now, you're probably thinking, the return of? What happened to the first smutty adventure of Indiana Jones? Well, it does exist. Indiana Jones and the Black Hole of Mamu. But outside of the title and its jungle setting, none of the elements from the Indiana Jones franchise are present in it. On the other hand, in The Return of Indiana Jones, the titular heroine goes on a search for a scepter. And no, that's not a euphemism for something else. Get your mind out of the gutter for a second, will you? She really is after a thingamabob. And yeah, there's plenty of that other stuff too, obviously. But the relic is the deciding factor between making it onto a list of Jones clones and not. Now, I want you to hold on to that information because I'm going to explain it a little bit further in a few seconds. And those are all the official Jones clones of the 1980s. Emphasis on official, because the remaining titles that are usually cited as Jones clones are actually not. There are those deceptively marketed as Raiders ripoffs while containing none of the subgenre's elements. We'll put those up here now, and you can examine them at your leisure on your own time as we move along. And some attempt to fool you by trying a little harder. The ones I speak of have a lot of the components that make up the Steven Spielberg trilogy, but are missing the main ingredient, the item that makes or breaks the Jones clone label, the MacGuffin, the relic. Remember what makes the difference between the first Indiana Jones picture and its sequel? It applies here. If the cast of characters aren't racing for an item of antiquity throughout the runtime, then the movie simply isn't a Jones clone. I don't care if Magnum P.I. was this close to playing Henry Jones. High Road to China is not a Jones clone. It's a Locate My Missing Father movie. Fathers are not relics, no matter how old they are. Nor is Nazi gold lost in an African thicket, stolen opium, or other inanimate objects that only hold earthly value and are not historical, biblical, mythical, or otherwise. And the otherwise also includes lost cities, temples, or what have you. As an example, a movie periodically titled The Further Adventures of Tennessee Buck sounds like a proper Raiders rip, doesn't it? At no point does the Tennessean native pine for a relic in it. Now, I ask you, would the title of a comedic jungle trekking sleazefest be The Further Adventures of Tennessee Buck had it not been released in a post-Raiders world? Don't bother thinking about it, because the correct answer is no, definitely not. It would more likely be called Savage Jungle, or in the case of one scene, How I Got Oiled Up and Sodomized by a Witch Doctor While Being Forced to Stare at My Husband's Severed Head. But the fact of the matter is, this reportedly funny cheesecake and peril movie doesn't have a relic in it, so it cannot be a bona fide Jones clone. Another close but no cigar example would be the Madonna-starring, former Beatle George Harrison producing 1986 vehicle Shanghai Surprise. Remember director J. Lee Thompson jumping ship on Alan Quartermain and the Lost City of Gold to helm Murphy's Law? Well, Madonna was set to star alongside Charlie Bronson in the latter, until she left the project to star in Shanghai Surprise, an adventure/romance that strives harder than Tennessee Buck for the Jones clones label, with a period setting, a rickshaw chase through a Chinese marketplace, and even a maimed villain who uses his injury to his advantage. A very specific rip. Still, the characters are on the search for opium, and that's not the same as this. Same issue with 1989's Secret of the Ice Cave, a kiddie spelunking effort that admittedly does have some impressive stunt work, but the title lies to you. There is a cavern, but there's no ice. And the secret isn't so Jones clone friendly.
I think it's cocaine.
Or family friendly for that matter. Or how about 1985's Tex and the Lord of the Deep? Decades after the rest of the world had moved on, the Italians just weren't willing to let the spaghetti western go. So why not produce one with a monochrome of Jones clones elements and market it to an unsuspecting French audience as a fully fledged temple hopper? That's exactly what they did. A straight-to-TV movie adapted from a popular Italian comic series. What they didn't do was include a relic in it. The movies we really want to focus on for the last leg of the video here are those that start off with plots revolving around recovering some sort of artifact, but then the focus shifts elsewhere, turning the movie into something else entirely. These are Kinda-sorta films, programmers that pay heavy lip service to the Raiders formula, but never fully commit. We'll be covering these, well, right now. Kinda-sorta film number 1, Jewel of the Nile. The sequel to the 1984 runaway hit Romancing the Stone. With its African setting, marketplace shootouts, locomotive chases, aircraft hijackings, and a slightly supernatural climax, this drives the Jones clone label further than the original film did. However, 3/4 of the way through, the filmmakers pull the rug from under us and reveal that the supposed jewel of the title is the nominal namesake of a holy man prophesied to unite the Arab world. Yeah, good luck with that. So, not a relic. However, the movie does pretend that there is one for so long, there might as well be. I'm counting it. Number 2, Bridge from Hell. The artifact in this WW2 actioner are a dozen holy chalices, but the movie doesn't seem to be in too much of a hurry to get down to the hunt for them, stalling every chance it gets.
What would you say to getting your hands on $5 million?
I'd be satisfied getting on a pack of camels.
But I'm talking about a treasure.
I'm talking about good American tobacco.
When our protagonists finally do get their hands on the cups, they are lost right away, and the goalpost gets shifted to escaping the war-torn hellscape that was Europe in the early 1940s. Number 3, The Tomb. It's a Mummy's Curse movie, so normally such a thing wouldn't be counted as a Jones clone or as a Kinda-sorta, but there is a brief scuffle for an amulet at the beginning of the movie, so sure, why not? What struck me was how familiar the rest of it all seemed. Number 4, Top Line. A historian searching for pre-Columbian artifacts gets more than he bargained for when he uncovers a buried UFO instead. Now, an ex-Nazi, gun-toting feds, KGB agents, extraterrestrials, and even a killer android are out to silence him before he tells the world of his discovery in this genre goulash that mixes Predator, Terminator with a dash of Indiana Jones. Number 5, Massacre at Dinosaur Valley. Paleontologist and all-around badass Kevin Hall boards a cargo plane with several other passengers in hopes of landing in a valley that is famous for its giant reptile fossils. Instead, the toy aircraft crash lands in a mud puddle smack dab in the middle of an unforgiving jungle. Kevin then drops his interest in relic hunting like Ilsa down a chasm, and from then on the movie resembles more a gross-out Italian cannibal flick than it does a Jones clone. Similar to Treasure of the Amazon with his exploitative tone, most of the cast of Massacre gets gruesomely offed by the various perils the jungle has to offer, until Kevin and the leading lady are all that's left for slave traders to shackle. It all culminates in a spaghetti western-esque Mexican standoff between Kevin, the head slaver, and a rattlesnake. Further proof that Italians just couldn't let things go. Unlike them though, I'm letting you go. That's it folks. Well, good night. Remember number 9 on the list? That Tollywood movie Hero? Aside from reimagining whole scenes from Raiders, did you know it gives the same treatment to the original 1966 Django? I guess Italy wasn't alone in never getting over spaghetti westerns.